Hello, and welcome to Classroom Management for Male Teachers. You should have a literal belief in your students. There is a significant amount of research into the idea that believing in students leads to performance both academically and behaviorally. Teachers can and should communicate their belief in their students by using encouraging words, especially for those who appear unmotivated and struggle. Be mindful of what's going on in your head when thinking about students. Are you making unfair assumptions about their abilities? Are you making assumptions about their future? How could these assumptions manifest in your treatment of this student? Teach a growth mindset. A huge piece of managing your classroom is having a growth mindset and teaching a growth mindset to your students. A suggested read, if you want to dive deeper into this topic, is The New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck. A fixed mindset is the idea that people believe basic qualities, such as intelligence and fixed traits, meaning they can't be improved or developed. A growth mindset is the idea that basic abilities can be improved and developed through dedication and hard work. The idea is to instill a love of learning, resilience, and growth. All teachers should have a growth mindset when it comes to their students. In terms of classroom management, growth mindset can be applied to behavior. Teach students the idea of a growth mindset, and suddenly, I'm a bad student and keep breaking the rules, turns into, I made a mistake here, but I can learn and grow. Empathize. A big piece of classroom management is empathy. It'll be much easier to demand respect and control of your classroom if you have relationships with your students. And I'll add there that if you understand your students. You are a big part of students' lives. Get to know them, learn their challenges and their strengths. What makes them laugh? What makes them cry? Share things about your life with students. Tell them stories and learn about their hobbies and interests. Building relationships with students makes them feel safe, supported, and will lead them to taking more ownership over learning. Also think about bell-to-bell learning. This is the idea that students are learning from the beginning of class to the end of class. However, it doesn't work if your students don't feel safe and welcome. That might mean you're taking a little bit of time away from learning to get to know your students and for them to get to know you. Decide where to draw the line. As a new teacher, you should know where you draw the line when it comes to student behavior. Deciding whether or not to send a student to the office is a major decision. While there are some issues that always require help from administration, specifically health and safety issues, you should ask yourself if sending a student out for talking is absolutely necessary. Decide ahead of time what requires a visit to the office and what could be worked out in the classroom. The default should always be keeping a student in class if possible. Remember that you lose respect with that student if you send him out. Taking things personally. Let's talk a little bit about the idea of taking things personally. Kids will say mean things. I can't say that enough. Your feelings will be hurt, or at least a student will attempt to hurt your feelings. No matter how amazing of a teacher you are, a student will say something awful to you, and it won't just happen once. Students might say something maybe a little bit more innocuous, such as, I'm so bored. Pull the student aside and let them know that you'd like to be the best teacher possible and that you're open to feedback, but that it's not acceptable to make public pronouncements in class. Remember that if a student says something mean, likely it has very little to do with you, but has more to do with what is happening in that student's life. Also, it might be a cry for help, worth referring to administration and counseling. Self-care. Let's talk about taking care of yourself and the teaching profession, because I think it goes a long way in being able to run a classroom well. Teaching requires lots of time and energy. Learn to set limits for yourself and prioritize your well-being. It's okay to say no, to not create everything. Do not immediately reply to an email. Do not check something off of your list. You should always be able to set aside time for family, exercise, food, and other things that make you happy. This will make you a better manager of a busy classroom. Remember your why. Why did you want to become a teacher? Reflect on this question. Don't forget the answer. Most people answer that they want to help students learn and grow, and can probably think of a teacher that influenced them to become the person that they are today. Create the classroom environment that supports that mission. Never lose sight of this or forget the importance of the job before you. Avoid being the cool teacher. It's good to be liked by your students, and it's good to be nice too. However, new teachers sometimes fall into the trap of trying to be cool, which often leads to becoming a pushover. Don't try really hard to get your students to like you. You'll end up going lax on discipline, and students will dread coming to your class because students want to come to an orderly class. It's okay to be yourself, but remember, you have great responsibility. Who is talking? Things get out of hand because there's too much lecturing going on. That means you're talking too much. This can lead to students feeling antsy and wanting to talk to a neighbor or move around. But a lot of this could be avoided by trying to structure lessons, making sure students have opportunities to talk. So, do a little test after teaching a lesson. Reflect, who talked more in this lesson? If you're talking too much, students' attention might go adrift, and then you've got yourself a behavior problem. Avoid igniting these situations by consciously building in times for students to engage one another and the material. Give clear instructions and get the students working. Then walk around the room talking to individuals and small groups, avoiding opportunities for students to get off task and disengage.